can say you don't know. Yeah, but you do not understand the terms? It can't be. So if I give you legal advice on how to, do you agree with that, by the way?
What?
Do you agree that legal advice can't be a crime?
Cannot?
Cannot be a crime. Do you agree with him?
If someone, I don't, when you're saying advice. No,
this is the problem.
Fuck, guys.
Oh my
no,
God.
because it doesn't make sense. Your question doesn't make sense.
You don't understand the terms?
If someone comes to me and says,
like,
hey,
this is such an obvious, it's a crime fraud exception. This is not debated. Nobody seriously debates this. Okay? Sorry. Hold on. This is so stupid. Attorney-client privilege does not cover statements made by a client to their lawyer if the statements are meant to further or conceal a crime. For this exception to apply, the client must have been in the process of committing a crime or planning to commit a crime. The exception may apply in some types of civil cases as well, such as when a client is planning to perpetuate fraud or another tort. The line between criminal and civil cases can be blurred because some conduct, such as assault, can result in blah, blah, blah. So for civil cases, maybe it's a little blurrier, but some of the crimes that arise in this context include crimes that are meant to obstruct an investigation or ongoing prosecution. A client might tell an attorney that their intent to tamper with witnesses or destroy evidence of a crime. They may tell the attorney that they will induce a witness to commit perjury by lying during their testimony, or they may ask the attorney to help them by presenting false evidence. In some cases involving financial crimes, falsifying information about income or hiding assets may trigger the crime fraud exception. So this will allow you to pierce the veil between the attorney and the client, meaning that now these statements are admissible in court and can be used to convict you, right? They can be used as evidence against you. The lawyer themselves could also come under criminal charges if they are... If a lawyer knows, if a lawyer knows that a witness plans to commit perjury or has committed perjury, they have a duty to disclose this information to the court. However, they may not have a duty to disclose perjured testimony by their client. The lawyer instead may ask the court to allow them to withdraw from the case and allow the client to find a new attorney without telling the judge that the reason for their withdrawal is the perjury. The judge may suspect that this is the reason, but attorneys often have other reasons to withdraw, so the judge may not be certain. This is such a stupid, I don't know why, whatever.
This is a crime I want to commit, right? Someone calls me up and says, "Hey, this is a crime I want to commit." I cannot further assist him. It would be wrong for me to then, at that point say, "This is how you can."
So can legal advice? Wait, so can we're
I can tell him.
Stop. We're gonna get clear answers.
Yes.
We're gonna get clear.
Can legal advice be a crime?
I'm answering the question.
Can legal advice be a crime? Yes or no? No. So what's your answer, Joe?
What I'm saying is, if you're giving it ethically, it cannot be.
Okay.
Oh my God! So then yes. If you have to add a qualifier, then the answer is yes, right? You would agree with that, right? If I ask you, can this be this? And you go, well, as long as, if you're giving any type of qualifier, then that means that then it can be, right? Then the answer is yes. You had to add a qualifier. So does that mean, because then Pisco's next question should be, okay, so then could unethical advice be a crime? Is unethical legal advice a crime? Because ethical legal advice isn't. You had to draw the distinguishing thing, right? So if unethical legal advice can be a crime, is unethical legal advice a type of legal advice? Like, sorry, fuck me, dude. Holy shit.
Assume you're giving it unethically. Can it be a crime? Yes or no? We're gonna get a conflict
thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Pisco. Thank you. Yes, yes. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. Jesus.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
You're playing a semantic game.
No, it's not semantic. Okay. Assume you're giving it unethically. Can it be a crime? Yes or no? We're gonna get a conflict here.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are.
You're playing a semantic game.
No, it's not semantic at all.
It certainly is.
What about it is semantic?
It's 100% semantic.
Colloquially, any person who is asked,
and now he's calling it.
Are you legally? Do you have a legal right to legal advice? 100% yes.
Yes.
When you use the phrase legal advice, you're playing a semantic game as to the definition you are choosing.
What do you mean by legal advice then? I'll ask you.
So if I go to a lawyer and say,
what do you mean by legal advice?
I'm telling you. Okay. So here's an example. We want to do a sweepstakes. We want to actually give our members at timcast.com, once a month we choose someone $10,000. If a lawyer then says, that's illegal, you can't do that, I say, oh, okay, thank you. Now what if they say, ooh, there's legalities which could make that illegal. Here's how you avoid breaking the law and actually make this work. That's not illegal.
So because he's telling you how to not break the law. He's telling you he's literally giving you advice to not break the law.
I'm asking you, as a definitional term, are you willing to provide a definition in your mind for what legal advice is, yes or no?
Legal advice is instruction and knowledge applied to an individual to better help them understand the law and how it applies to their circumstances.
In using that definition, can legal advice be a crime?
If it's just helping them understand, no, it cannot.
Helping them with the purpose of, so I'll just be clear. Using that definition, providing legal advice for the purpose of helping someone carry out a crime.
No,
I didn't say that.
No. He used a broader definition of legal advice.
Okay, let's try again. Let me try again. Here we go. Here's why you're wrong.
Yeah.
So okay. A guy calls his lawyer and says, hey man, I need money. And I'm trying to figure out how to get it. If I were to go to a guy and point a weapon at him and say, can I borrow $50? Is that illegal? And the lawyer's gonna go, yeah, that's illegal. You can't do that. That's you're robbing. You go to jail. Really? What if I just like put my hand in my pocket so it looked like I got a gun? You're still robbing. That's illegal. Interesting. So I can't do that. No, you can't. And if you do something like that, you'll go to jail. All right. Thank you for the advice. I'm going to construct my actions now in a way that applies to the legal advice you gave me to help me carry out that crime.
No.
But the lawyer is not helping you commit the crime. Steel just can't be built on this surface. What the fuck? Wait, how do you... What boxes am I allowed to use in space?
hang
Is a
on.
lawyer going to jail for that?
So what if the intention of a lawyer was to further that crime and make it more likely?
You a mind reader now?
No. In the criminal law, we do this.
Why do you say, thank you, yes, Pisco, thank you for saying this. Are you a mind reader now? Excuse me, state of mind and ascertaining state of mind is a prerequisite to basically every single criminal charge. You understand that, right? Crimes require a mens rea. They require a criminal state of mind to be convicted of the crime. Crimes are not things that happen by accident. You have to have the prerequisite state of mind to be convicted of the crime that you've committed 99% of the time. Sorry.
This all the time.
Thank you,
The
yes.
intention of a lawyer was to further that crime and make it more likely.
You a mind reader now?
No. In the criminal law, we do this all the time.
You have to.
Mens rea.
Indeed.
It's not even that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, yes. And not only do you do it all the time, you have to do it. By definition, you have to do this, right?
One of the biggest things that you have to do as a criminal lawyer
You have
is,
to,
if
yes.
you're a prosecutor, is to
Thank
prove
you.
mens rea. So I'll ask you, what if the purpose of the lawyer was to actually get him to commit the
Like
crime?
Saul Goodman.
Yeah. So wait, but I'm gonna get some answers from you guys one of these days. So if the purpose,
You give answers every time. Somebody dodges the question, answer yes or no,
if the purpose of the advice is to further the crime, to make it happen, to have the outcome happen, is that legal advice? Can that
It
be
is
a
no
crime?
longer legal advice. It is criminal
So
advice. It is
what you've
your
done
compass.
is you put in your definition of legal advice. You're saying legal advice by definition can't be illegal. And if your definition of legal advice says it can't be illegal, then I guess you're by definition correct. But
Let me
most people's
ask
definition
you.
of legal advice doesn't include, it has to be legal advice.
Do people have a constitutional right to counsel?
Yes,
Yes.
But that means they could be providing illegal activities to a defendant.
they could be.
People have a constitutional right to some illegal activities.
So they have a constitutional right to legal advice, but doesn't mean that
This
it's
is the semantic
No,
issue I'm
it's not semantic. I'm happy to answer that question. They have a legal right to legal advice, 100%, to access and retrieve that legal advice. That doesn't mean that the advice they receive can't also be a crime. There's no contradiction there. Agree?
so the
Wait,
challenge-
do you agree there's no contradiction there?
No.
What's the contradiction?
When we refer to legal advice, we are not referring to engagement in criminal activity. And if you have two guys and they're not lawyers, and one guy is advising the other guy on how to rob a bank, that's not legal advice. Just because you have a law degree doesn't make it legal advice.
Well, okay, so your definition of legal advice, that would be legal advice. I mean, you gave a definition that didn't say, and by the way, the legal advice can't be part of a criminal conspiracy. You're carving out the thing that would be
to definitionally understand what is our constitutional right to counsel versus what is an illegal action.
So the right to counsel doesn't mean that the counsel you're receiving is legal itself.
So-
they're different things, and there's no contradiction in what I'm saying.
To be honest, none of it really matters.
Why?
Because the interpretation of the actions of Jenna Ellis and Trump's other lawyers, I forgot their names, based in Wisconsin, was that Donald Trump approached them and said, how do I legally challenge an election? And they said, here's how you do it, and we'll draft it for you. And the government went, aha, we think it's a crime, so you're under arrest.
All right, so let me change that. So only hypotheticals just to make sure that this principle is being applied consistently.
If somebody were to come up to you and say, how can I legally murder my wife? Are you good there? Like, you can't do that, right? Again,
Let's say that Jenna Ellis.
like just to be clear, so that you guys understand this, right? There is a lot of like tricky Reddit arguments, and maybe even in movies they do this, where somebody's like, I actually now it looks like I murdered my wife. But I actually did this on opposite day. Or I was in the state of Alabama, and there's a 400-year-old thing from the Migna Chicosaki tribe that has never been overruled before that says that murder actually means, like putting a Band-Aid on somebody and not shoving a knife through their throat. So actually, it's okay. Like, these don't fly in court, right? A judge will look at this. There will be reasonable interpretations that are set forth. Like, this idea that you can be like all sneaky deaky, like, there's no way that you can even interpret this is bullshit. This is stupid. This doesn't work like this, okay?
Went, aha, we think it's a crime, so you're under arrest.
All right, so let me change that. So only hypothetical just to make sure that this principle is being applied consistently. Let's say that Jenna Ellis said, okay, this won't work. What you have to do is you have to order the military to seize the halls of Congress and hold at gunpoint all the Congress people, and that will be, that way it'll just be the best way to do it.
That's an absurdity.
No, you can say it's an absurdity.
I'm sorry. Ooh, I can't do any hypothetical. Ooh.
It's called a hypothetical, and you provide hypotheticals. People are you going to say you're not going to answer it?
Unprecedented absurdity without codified law.
This whole thing is unprecedented. You understand that sometimes you have to be able to deal with unprecedented things, right?
Answer it, or you're going to say it's illegitimate. I don't have to answer it.
I'll answer any question you ask.
So if the question is,
If the Marshmallow Man showed up, should Trump call in the Ghostbusters next?
so if Jenna Ellis said something to the effect of, the best way to do this, Donald Trump, and she wanted this to happen, right? Is for you to actually go with tanks into Congress, hold up some Congress people, kill them if you don't want, if they're challenging you. That way you head off any kind of impeachment.
So you're saying she instructed him to murder people?
To arrest.
Oh my God. The most literal fucking interpretation possible. Jesus. Okay.
Seize it and
Legal
murder
advice.
and murder if necessary.
In what prospect of law can you go to a court and murder someone in the middle of a hearing? That's your case.
You're saying that the best. So this is why it's legal advice. She says one thing that could stop you from stealing the election would be if they held impeachment proceedings and immediately impeached and removed you. So one way to head that off from a legal perspective would be if those people could not attend their sit-ins. And I'm just letting you know it would be really convenient if you killed them. And I want you to do that.
So instructing someone to commit murder is legal advice.
I'm asking you. Wait,
It's not legal advice.
If you said, for example, in order to prevent this bad outcome, this bad judgment, you should kill. You should kill a witness.
But there's no function of law where you're allowed to do that. There's no legal advice. That's a crime. It's murder.
It's tailored to.
No. Excuse me. What crime did she commit? By just telling Trump that she's not committing murder, right? He would have to. Tim should acknowledge that she's not committing murder. So what crime would she be charged with?
to a legal matter. It's tailored to a specific proceeding. Here we're talking about.
It's not legal advice to instruct your client to murder someone. No.
Okay, so if your definition of legal advice excludes any illegal conspiracy, then by definition you've said
then Pisco can just say, okay, fine, then we agree. You're just using different terms, which is fine. You're a layman. That's okay. We're just using different terms then. So you agree though that you could be charged with a crime here because this wouldn't be legal advice, right? So then we agree, for instance, that your lawyer could tell you things that in Tim's world, in Tim's mind, wouldn't qualify as legal advice, which is fine. Then you can just say that. That's cool. Then we agree then. Okay, we're using different terms. That's okay.
No, you're trying to justify that Trump, under a circumstance with no codified law, making it illegal.
We're backing up. We're in very specific territory right here, Tim. And the specific territory is
where in the law does it say you cannot send in your slave electors before the safe harbor deadline?
Why should it have to say that?
To make it a crime.
Why?
Because in this country, you can't be arrested for things the state makes up.
Okay, so does it have to? So there's laws against, for example, lying to Congress. Fair. So do they have to list out all the possible lies you can tell to Congress in order for it to be legal? So lying to Congress about how much money you have in the bank, lying to Congress about the effects of a law. They have to list out every single specific potential iteration of lying to Congress.
So you're
That's
saying, based on the interpretation of the state of Georgia, that they felt Jenna Ellis drafting a letter for Donald Trump was part of a criminal conspiracy. She can be charged for that.
100%. She pled guilty because she is guilty.
So I guess my view is then, if Donald Trump wants to interpret the actions of Mahmoud Khalil as threats to state secrets or state foreign policy, he should be deported.
Wait, but you would condemn things that you feel went beyond the pale, right?
So now you're
wait. And people can argue about whether it's legal or illegal, and that's what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I am.
And you're willing to condemn the prosecution of Jenna Ellis, fair?
Yes.
Why aren't you willing to condemn the potential deportation of Mahmoud Khalil?
For the exact reason you have said Jenna Ellis as a lawyer should be charged, is why I'm saying Mahmoud Khalil should be deported.
Test the legality of it because there's no specific law?
No. Because your arguments aren't based in law. It's your interpretation of what is and your moral worldview.
Well, I mean, it's based on the Supreme Court precedent that you seem to accept that these people have First Amendment rights. If they have First Amendment rights, what kind of First Amendment wouldn't protect someone who has that right from deportation based on protected activities? You seem to grant that they had that right, but now you're saying, I don't really know. They might as well test it.
So my point is, the INA says they can have their visas revoked for whatever reason, whenever.
But
right?
would that include religion-based reasons? And you said
doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh, we've been circling around this.
Because there's an inherent
you guys just like circling around.
If Trump said
carcass, why? And then you gaslight that we haven't answered your question.
Yeah,
which is very, very frustrating because we answer your question over and over and over again. Then you're like, you'll never answer this question. You keep dodging my questions. 2 seconds after we answer your question, we've said how many times? Both of us have taken the position they have First Amendment rights. They're not the same level as what American citizen rights are, which is one reason, by the way, this couldn't have any impact.
So if they're not the same, wait, Joe. If they're not the same level, what are they? I mean, Tim is saying that based on anything, they could throw them out. So if Mahmoud Khalil said something like this, I'd like a French toast and some eggs, please.
Right.
And they said on the basis of that, you're going to be deported from the country. Would the First Amendment protect him in that instance? Yes or no?
I think that would not meet that low threshold that I've said over and over. Facially legitimate.
But the INA, Tim said the INA. Wait, Tim said.
Tim gave you his moral perspective.
Do you disagree with it? Wait, do you disagree with him?
Do I agree with him morally or legally?
Legally.
Is the law wrong?
Legally, do you disagree with him?
I think legally you cannot just throw someone out for ordering French bread.
Okay,
so but you cannot say because he ordered French bread, I'm throwing him out.
So why can you say so?
However, you can do. You can go. Hey, this guy just fucking ordered French bread. You're being deported under Section 221I of the Immigration and National Security Act.
But they didn't do that.
No, they literally did.
They didn't do that.
I'm saying they didn't give a reason.
Their reason is Marco Rubio's determination. Marco Rubio's determination is based.
Right, that's my point. They didn't give a reason. They cited 221.
No, they did not cite this law. They did not. They cited the basis of deportability. That's INA 237 little a little I. I think it's sub 4 or something like that. But you can go to 237 if you actually read the notice to appear. 222 is not the basis.
234.
It's 237. INA 237, and it starts basis of deportable aliens should be the name of the statute. It's a long subsection, but it's in sub A.
237. Okay, hold on. I think it's up here.
It's A4.
A4, 237 A4.
I'm not sure if it's 237.
Where does 237 start? I see 236, and then all of a sudden it says 237. Oh, I see. It's at the bottom. You see how they do that with like one sentence at the bottom and it makes the whole page 237?
Okay, so now go
A4.
So
we're looking. Look at all these. Wait, there isn't one. Is it A1?
I think it's A1.
Well, I'll just look for deportation.
A1 because that's
yes.
Inadmissible aliens, present in violation of law, violated non-immigrant status or condition of entry.
I think it's big 4.
Also, they accuse them of fraud too.
Correct, but there's no material.
Big 4?
Yeah,
I see.
So
isn't it stupid how they do this?
Yeah, no, it's below the criminal offenses. It's down in 4 under terrorism and national security.
Yep.
So under
security and general concerns,
so it's C. It's C1.
C1.
Any alien whose presence or activity in the United States, the Secretary of State has reasonable ground to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States is deportable. So Secretary of State Marco Rubio didn't cite the provision that you cited. He cited 237, 4 CI, and he said in his determination why he's adverse to the interest is because he supports Hamas.
Right.
And Joe seemed to accept that if you ordered French bread, it wouldn't be a basis of removability, presumably because the First Amendment protects resident aliens. Why would it be if you support French bread? It's not a basis of removability. Why would it be if you support Hamas?
No, I think the bare minimum threshold is he has to establish that he's legitimately considered a national security threat. That those national security threats are not supposed to be fleshed out before the public. In fact, I think that would be stupid.
Are not supposed to be fleshed out. National security threats are not supposed to be fleshed out before the public. How much you want to bet this guy has lost his shit complaining about like the fucking Patriot Act or FISA courts? So national security stuff is now in the purview of secret courts behind the scenes that are not supposed to be in public view? No shot. I don't believe that.
To believe that a policy is supposed to be
fleshed out. I have a simple question. Do you believe that support of Israel is in alignment with American foreign policy?
It depends who gets to decide, right? I think the support for Israel probably is, yeah.
70 plus years, $250 billion?
Yeah, probably.
Do you believe that the protests are a threat to that American foreign policy?
Yeah, I might.
So,
well, I don't really think that, but I think it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I just want to be clear. It doesn't matter. It cannot violate the First Amendment. That's what's clear here. I actually don't think that the protests would probably, get under that rationale, except to the extent that they're worried about people being critical of Israel. But it doesn't matter what it says because the First Amendment.
I agree. I think then the way the procedure would go is that we're going to get a Supreme Court hearing on whether it goes one way or the other.
I think there's no chance
Maybe.
the Supreme Court.
I would doubt that.
So I think it's fair to say this.
He has procedural problems first and foremost. He has procedural problems first and foremost because you have to exhaust the administrative procedure before he's able to go into federal court. But even beyond that, as I said a while ago, probably an hour ago at this point, we're at a juncture here when it comes to national security that this is the one area that the Supreme Court has refused to intercede on executive exclusive authority, and that's why for you to think that when we're talking about,
but we have to determine, like, you can't just say now, like. I don't understand. I feel like when lawyers are like get politically bought into a certain thing, they start talking like laymen. Like that's what it feels like. Like good logic in this conversation, he feels like a layman to me, right? Like this idea of, well, when it's national security, the president needs to be able to act. Yes, that's true. And we can agree with that, sure. But you understand that the procedure here is important. How do we determine what is national security, right? That's the key thing. Like, should the president be able to have exceptional power during times of great crisis? Probably. He's our commander-in-chief. He's the chief executive. And the Supreme Court has said as much and upheld that pretty consistently throughout the entire history of this country. However, we would agree that the president shouldn't be able to do anything just because he says national emergency or national security reasons, right? Like, that's the obvious, like that, but this is like obvious.
About someone whose First Amendment rights are already lessened compared to American citizens. This has no potential ramification on First Amendment rights of any citizens. When we're talking about the fact that he's failed to abide by the same terms that enabled him to obtain a visa, and that he committed fraud in obtaining a green card, which throws into question his entire legitimacy of the green card whatsoever. I mean, and would be a basis to exclude him also. So when we look at it, when we're looking at it from that perspective, I think that there is such that I've debated you in the past about what the Supreme Court would do. And I'll tell you right now, I was correct last time.
Again, I don't know how many other ways I can say this or how many analogies I could give. Like, imagine you're what do you most of you guys do programming? Like, imagine you have a program and you're trying to make something work, and you haven't called like the proper library or whatever to load whatever you need to make some particular program run. And somebody goes to you and they're like, hey, your shit's not working. And you're like, well, I don't know why. Like, all of this code is present. And it's like, yeah, but you haven't like called the library. You haven't actually entered this. It's not being used right now. It's like, okay, so what? It exists over there, right? So it should be fine, right? Like, obviously not. You would have to make a call to it. You have to incorporate it into the project somehow. You have to make a call to it somehow. You can't just say that because this evidence exists somewhere in the universe that we're allowed to consider every single thing for the purposes of deporting this guy. It has to be submitted to the proper forum so that it can be analyzed by the proper forum, so that it can be used to make a determination in that forum. Like, this applies. This applies across all domains to any. You can make an example out of any. It's just so stupid. Like,
I'm on the 14th Amendment issue, and I told you it would be 7-2, if not 8-1, that Trump would win on the 14th Amendment
I predicted
issue.
he would lose too.
You thought he would lose?
Sorry, I predicted.
We're talking about his eligibility to run.
I predicted Trump would win too.
No,
I did predict it.
Pisco absolutely predicted it. We argued this on my stream, or not argued it, but we talked about it on my stream so much. Pisco absolutely said that Trump's probably going to win this case, but it would be a mistake for him to win it. Pisco was here talking about it so much. And that was a bullshit ass fucking case. He's talking about the Colorado Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court decided that the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment was very inconvenient because it would probably prohibit Trump from running for president.
No, I have a clip of it of me saying he's going to lose or he's going to win.
And I told you it would be 6-3. I said it would not be merely 6-3. I said even the liberal justices will recognize that this is so far out of bounds.
I thought it would be
it's going to be at least 7-2, if not 8-1, and it ended up being 9-0. And I'm telling you now,
it probably was going to be 6-3, I think. But according to the PDF of the ruling that released, it looked like it was going to be 6-3 with 3 dissentings, I think. But then when it got released, it ended up being 9-0. And they talked about how the writings of the court shouldn't be turning up the temperature on the discourse or whatever bullshit. But whatever.
Now, Mahmoud Khalil is not going to win at the Supreme Court level. I'll tell you right, there's no chance that he does, because this is the one area where the executive authority is at its highest, and unless you can show that they specifically hated this guy for one reason that had nothing to do with his speech,
obviously did.
Because then this one is the one that he
obviously
that
did.
Muslim, that because he's a Muslim, they're getting rid of him. In that case, they're not.
No one believes this shit, by the way. The normal, you realize how out of touch you sound to normal Americans. Everyone understands that the reason they're going after these people is because they don't like his speech, and that's the rationale they gave. You look at Mark Rubio, says his support for
not
Hamas.
liking his speech affects foreign policy and national security, which is the whole point of it. That's granted.
Has to be viewpoint neutral. Has has to be viewpoint neutral, or it's a First Amendment violation.
It's an executive branch.
I want to add, the speech is particularly that it's anti-Israel, that it's critical of Israel. And I think the reason why I would agree with you on the court siding with the Trump administration over Mahmoud Khalil is for two reasons. The Supreme Court tends to be deferential on issues of national security. So even if there's rights, they allow for Barack Obama to pass the indefinite detention provision, things in the Patriot Act, torture of foreign nationals. Barack Obama murdered American citizens, multiple, I think, 4 or 5 individuals. So when it comes to the Trump administration saying, we want to support Israel, this guy came to our country and he's rallying people against Israel, that's bad for foreign policy, I imagine the Supreme Court's going to go, well, we don't care about rights when it comes to foreign policy. Then you have the issue of American support for Israel is very high. And so even if there was a principled issue of this person has a right to speech, everyone's going to be like, don't care, we like Israel.
But I'm not trying to pull the nation here, Tim. I'm not trying to read tea leaves about the Supreme Court.
I get it. I'm saying that the American
I'm trying
people
to push you guys. And the reason I'm trying to push you guys is because
you are.
we both have
because if he was Tommy Robinson expressing racist views, if you would not be coming here screaming about his rights.
100%.
I can't even believe that he would make that of the pisser, of the grand pisser himself. The idea that Pisco wouldn't be out here, okay, Merrick Garland's #1 fucking defender, he's trying to say, oh, Pisco wouldn't be considered. Bullshit. That is such an unbelievably stupid fucking thing to say about Pisco of all people. Come on, give me a break. Good Logic is hardcore projecting his own inconsistencies here.
100% I would. By the way, I condemned a lot of these protests. I call them insurrections, some of them. Just to be clear about my consistency there, I generally have not seen as like a crazy person on this issue. I'm calling balls and shots, and I'm pushing you guys. I'm pushing you guys because I know if someone came up with a rationale, Johnny come lately rationale that said something like, we believe having Muslims in this country at all is a bad for our foreign policy vis-a-vis Israel. Israel wants us to have Muslims be out of this country. They want us to push them out. And so we're going to deport all these aliens because we can, and it's our foreign policy determination. I think that wouldn't you stand up and say that's wrong? Wouldn't you? Would you stand here and be like, well, the Supreme Court often defers to the Secretary of State's determinations about who is and who's not a threat? And so because the Secretary of State said the Muslims are all threats.
But hold on, you're combining. You're combining a moral question with a legal question. So let's just
on the law
make them distinct.
Wait, real quick. What shortcut can I use to take the ice in here and like add it to the ice here? I know there's a way. Oh fuck! Like I just right-clicked and removed it. I know there's some way to do this. Is it just Q click? No.
On the law. So on the law, when you come and say this is clearly illegal, of course the Supreme Court should not.
In a scenario that what? Give me one time.
In the scenario where the Secretary of State says it's in the foreign policy interest of the United States not to have Muslim aliens in this country.
Control.
And that determination is made based on our long friendship with Israel and our long relationship with Israel, and they don't want it there, and we don't want to undermine that relationship.
Do you need to write these 4 words down? Facially, legitimate, and bona fide. It's actually 5 words technically. Do you need to write them down?
So I just want to be...
Because every time you keep making this crazy, this extreme hypothetical of banning all Muslims, and I keep coming back to you and saying, I've never taken that position. I don't know anyone.
I gave you that citation.
Trump has never taken that position.
Trump had taken that position. Trump literally ran for president. Don't let Republicans... Dude, conservatives will gaslight you so much on this. What the hell is going on? We need to ban all Muslims.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Don't ever let... They gaslight you on everything. They gaslight you on shit that is on video. They gaslight you so much on this shit.
Ridiculous hypothetical, and then I come back to you and I say, why are you giving me this hypothetical?
That citation is from Kleindienst versus Mendel. That language comes from Kleindienst versus Mendel, as cited in Trump versus United States.
1972.
Trump versus Hawaii, in the section on the Establishment Clause. So, but that had to do with an admission decision. We're not talking about admission decisions.
And then after that, the Supreme Court has said that you have to abide by the same terms while you're here that you do for admission. Think of it like this. Let me ask you a question. No. I'm going to ask you this question because you keep talking and trying to frame this as a First Amendment right. It's not at all a First Amendment issue because from the perspective of the Supreme Court that you're stuck to the same standard. And when you know that to get in here, you can't be expressing terrorist supportive perspectives. You cannot.
You don't have. Oh my God! I just fucking accidentally rewound. God damn it! I pushed one. When you're coming into this country, you have no rights. You're not an American citizen. You're applying from outside. Swedish people in Sweden don't have a right, don't have any constitutional rights in the United States of America. Russian people in Russia, British people in Britain. Once you are a lawful permanent resident, once you have a visa, now you're subject to the U.S. jurisdiction. Now your rights have expanded. They've changed. You're recognized by the U.S. government. It's not the same as somebody applying to get in versus somebody who is in and is already accepted.
Across the country, where they violate every law with gay sex in public. I'm not trying to be crude, but they do. Then. And
cases for military
organ activity, got injured and got in trouble for.
Typically set forth in the 14th Amendment that you'll have those Amendment right. It's not at all a First Amendment issue because from the perspective of the Supreme Court that you're stuck to the same standard. And when you know that to get in here, you can't be expressing terrorist supportive perspectives. You cannot do that when you're trying to get in here. Do you agree with that part? Let's start with this premise. I'm going to go step by step. Do you think that someone that the United States of America has a right to keep people out for saying, you know what, you express terrorist activity, support for terrorism. We're not
under binding.
They have a right to
under binding precedent of the Supreme Court because there's a distinction between admission decisions and non-admission decisions. Whether I'm telling you what the law says, and what the law says is you can ban people from the country if they're Chinese. if they're Asian.
That is not the law any longer.
When has it been overturned? When has Xi Jinping been overturned?
I don't know.
It has not been overturned.
You're quoting a case, and when you
it's a famous case, the Chinese exclusion cases, the first immigration laws on the books. They said you could ban Chinese people from entering the country. Look it up. So I'm acknowledging the reality that the courts treat admission decisions very differently, and so I acknowledge that. Whether I agree or not.
But you're recognizing that they can keep someone out on that basis. Now the Supreme Court has also said that you're kept to the same standard while you're here. If you're kept to the same standard while you're here, that means you could be deported.
So that is not the case, and there are different rights at admission versus when you're in the country. For example, you have no procedural due process rights when you're outside of the country seeking admission.
Yeah,
agreed?
correct.
You do have procedural due process rights when you're in the country and they're trying to force you out.
Specifically set forth in the 14th Amendment that you'll have those due process rights, as Tim read 45 minutes ago.
Wait a second. The 14th Amendment says that states shall not deprive individuals of due
But
process.
the point is that Congress has and through Congress.
Can you give a rundown on why the U.S. is so aligned with Israel or vice versa? I think that during the I actually haven't read the history from the U.S. side, but from what I understand of Israeli history, I think that during the Cold War, when the United States is kind of searching for allies around the world or people that are aligned with U.S. interest, Israel in the 70s was just an obvious answer for the United States as being the country most easily aligned with kind of like Western democratic values to get a foothold in the Middle East. Because a lot of countries, or I shouldn't say a lot of countries, the Soviet Union had been trying to gain a foothold in the Middle East as well, and so the United States, right? And Britain had a foothold. Obviously, right, we deposed the Shah during the Iranian Revolution because of Britain's issues with them trying to take over. I think what was it, BP or whatever the British oil company was. You had you had Soviet invasions into Afghanistan. You have the United States. Like both sides are just trying to gain as much of a foothold as they can. So appealing to Israel was, and then working with Israel was the U.S. foothold into the Middle East.
Constitutional amendment even has recognized that when it comes to due process specifically, we're going to confer upon non-citizens that express protection.
You put stuff in the ghost cursor.
Also said that about the First Amendment, but
that's not Congress. That's not Congress saying that. That's the court interpreting it.
The courts have said the same thing about the First Amendment.
Right.
Wait, no, stop. What kind of First Amendment would protect the speech of someone saying, I want French bread? And you said they can't deport them based on that. You said that. You said those words. What kind of First Amendment?
I'm not embarrassed.
I know. So what kind of First Amendment, where at its maximum it's protecting political speech, would protect that kind of speech, but not core political speech? What are you talking about?
I'll tell you
what First Amendment is that?
From a moral perspective?
No, from a legal perspective.
From a legal perspective, I'm walking you through it. How can you ever can a person contract away their rights to free speech?
Yes.
Can they?
Wait, are there fundamental rights?
Let's say a person is charged. Let's say a person is charged with some sort of crime, and they end up pleading out, and they say, you know what? The DA says, I want you to promise that for the next 5 years, you're not going to drink any alcohol. You're not going to meet with this person. You're not going to go to any of these meetings where they have lots of drinking.
Yeah, you can
limit his
waive
right to assembly.
You can waive certain rights.
Oh, okay, and you can waive his right to free speech.
That's not
inherent in coming in here and signing visa thing and filling out and saying, I'm not a terrorist and I don't support.
Where do you waive your First Amendment rights on your visa?
When the fuck do you do that? What? That's never part of the green card process, is waiving your First Amendment. I don't remember that. Maybe I wasn't in that meeting. Maybe there's a secret one that Melina went to where it's like, oh, just Stephen, by the way, I waived my First Amendment rights to get my green card. What?
Inherent in that is a right for them to pull you out of this country.
Oh, inherent. Oh, so they don't waive the right. It's inherent in it, aka bullshit.
If in fact you change that position, because either you lied when you got in here or you changed the position and now.
So could you waive away? Wait. So I'll ask you. Could you waive away your right to protection against torture?
Do you know that?
Answer that. Could you waive that right away?
Yeah.
The government say, as a condition of your green card, you accept that if we want to torture you, you get tortured.
I don't know.
Could they say
Why
that?
Are you going to a different
Because I'm asking if you're consistent.
Because I don't know. I'm sitting here and trying to figure out, as Tim pointed out earlier, when it comes specifically to cruel and unusual punishment, it's difficult to say that's a very subjective perspective. So you're asking me, can he agree?
Could the government say something like?
No. I'll answer right now. Is it legal for you to make a contract that you'll let Tim cut your finger off? Is it okay for you to actually make a contract that you'll let Tim cut your finger off if he gives you $1 million? Is that legal?
I think it would be legal for the government to regulate that for sure.
Okay.
Illegal to regulate.
I think it would be legal for the government to regulate that conduct as between private parties. But this is different, right? We're talking about the government as a condition of your green card saying you sign away all due process. As a condition, you sign away your right against torture. You sign away your right against unreasonable search and seizures. You think the government could do that and go, every one of your rights, and you can just sign?
They can.
I think they can. You think?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that
it's a fact.
I don't know. Why is that a fact?
People enlist in the military all the time and they waive their rights.
They don't waive their fundamental rights as Americans. You think you could do that?
So my understanding is that
every time you sign an arbitration clause, you're signing away your right to due process.
But my understanding is
that you're signing that. That is, I actually don't know the answer to this, because there's some things you can sign and there's some things you can't. So for instance, you could waive like this. I'm thinking the most extreme example is I think you can sign a thing saying somebody could murder you and they're indemnified from it. Because I'm thinking of if you do fights like boxing or UFC or MMA, there are indemnification clauses. I'm almost positive that you can sign there that as part of the fight, if somebody dies, the boxer isn't charged as a murderer, right? But I don't think you can sign. I don't think you can sign away everything, and that has to be in the context, I think, of like a sporting event or something, right? Like I don't think you can sign a contract saying like I'm going to be this person's slave for 6 months no matter what, and there's no way for me to escape this contract. I don't know what the line is there. I don't know what the line is there, but I know there must be one. I would imagine.
Is that for a lot of people who join the military, for instance, they're subject to laws that, yes, that your freedom of movement is gone. You are legally not required to be in certain
As a
places.
condition of employment.
No, you can get in trouble. Like you can get in, like maybe, but and I could be totally wrong about this. But I've heard stories from my veteran friends that they engaged in a sporting activity, got injured, and got in trouble for it. Not like they went to jail, but it was considered damage to government property or something.
I think instances of military and in certain cases of
Also, you got to be so careful when you're talking about military stuff here. One, military has due process. There are military courts for things. But then two, you have to be mindful that there's a difference between like getting fired versus having criminal charges. These are different things as well. Okay. Destiny, for instance, you can't legislate away rent control in San Francisco. No matter what you put in a lease, rent control still takes priority. I'm sure because the law would supersede it there. Yeah, but there are some things that you can. I'm trying to figure out like why for boxing and stuff can you basically sign away your right to, like you can like your right to life, like somebody can murder you. I'm sure there's a legal precedent or carve-outs or something. I just don't know what they. I don't know the framework for any of that. I don't think you can even directly sign your life away. Pretty sure assisted suicide isn't legal in any state. Oh, see, like that's a good question. Let's say that I wanted to do assisted suicide, but I'm not allowed to in my state. Couldn't you just have like a 90-year-old with cancer like sign up to do a boxing match where they sign an indemnification clause and then the boxer just kills? I'm sorry.
employment that makes sense. So there could be some areas why there's exceptions.
You're not allowed to.
Wait, Plastic Jesus says the indemnification is not to indemnify against murder. It's to clarify that you are knowingly taking part in a dangerous activity and stipulating to the fact that the mens rea does not exist. Okay, maybe that, sure. And actually, that makes sense what Plastic Jesus is saying, because like, if somebody was in a boxing match and a dude like punched the fuck out of you and you like go down and the guy sees you on the ground, he's like still like oh, like killing, he's like oh, and he's like I'm fucking murdering, I'm gonna kill you, I'm murdering you, and he actually like murders a guy, you probably can be charged with murder in that circumstance, I would imagine, huh?
There's exceptions to everything, but here what we're talking about, like
there are.
Like,
You can't sometimes sign away your rights.
Sign away your rights for as a condition of employment, perhaps, but not as a condition for just as a member of the community that the country has deemed you fit to enter the country as a permanent resident. And think about this even more specifically.
Which that never really happened.
Think about it more specifically. Under your waiver theory, I want to analyze your waiver theory about how shocking it is. Under your waiver theory, could the government condition Social Security checks on you waiving away all your rights? Could they condition welfare on that?
How many different hypotheticals?
You can't knowingly kill someone. It's more about if a civil suit was brought against them. Sure, but there has to be some part of signing that contract or being in that event has to also, I don't want to say indemnify you from criminal activity, but make it incredibly unlikely to impossible. Otherwise, nobody would fight professionally, right? Because like, imagine the government comes in at some point, they're like, you know what? You guys all kind of look like you're assaulting each other. I'm about to charge every motherfucker in here, right? That's some Denzel Washington training day shit, right? Like,
are you going to ask me about? Because I don't know, where's the relevance to talking about Social Security when we're having a discussion about the right of the government to deport illegal aliens?
You said that right is so ephemeral, right? That right, you said that that people have First Amendment rights, that resident aliens have First Amendment rights, but that right is so ephemeral that it could be waived away as a condition of entering the country at all.
I think your First Amendment rights could in theory be waived away even if you're an American citizen. All the
Even
more
for
so.
getting Social Security checks, even for getting any government benefit at all.
See, it's such a random and ridiculous
Why don't you
perspective.
answer it then?
It just drives me crazy. You're a lawyer, right? You take the LSAT, which is a whole bunch of like logic testing. That's all the LSAT really is. It's not legal knowledge, just logic testing, right? And then you go to law school and doing hypotheticals and doing contract negotiations is all about hypotheticals and reading prior case law. Like, I don't understand how some people go through the rigmarole of all that and then come out and they're like, "Whoa, that's a ridiculous hypothetical." You're literally a lawyer. Your like job is hypotheticals almost to some extent. Like this is like your job. What do you mean you can't consider a hypothetical? If any profession in the world should be to consider hypotheticals, it should be your profession. What the fuck?
Security checks, even for getting any government benefit at all?
See, it's such a random and ridiculous
Why don't you
perspective.
answer it then?
I don't, because I don't know. I don't know the answer to a
You know
question
the
as far
answer.
as, wait, what do I know? Don't tell me what I know. I'm telling you, I
If the
don't know. Are you
government-
calling me?
no, no,
Are
you
you saying
fucking
I'm
know this.
trying?
No, this is
I don't know what that
garbage.
means.
Like, yeah, can you, is the bar exam, is it written stuff or is it just multiple choice? I imagine it's probably a lot of written, huh? Like, imagine on every written thing for the bar exam, you're like, can't consider is hypothetical, can't consider is hypothetical, won't refuse to consider silly, wacky hypothetical. Like, and do you pass if you do that?
I can't waive away Social Security.
I don't, no.
So real quick, if someone were enlisted and they organized a protest, I'm trying to use this specifically as Mahmoud Khalil, it is a criminal offense. So you can actually sign away your right to engage in protest.
As a condition of employment in the military.
It's not employment.
Yeah, you're subject to military code. Listen, there can be specific cases for military.
But even for that military stuff, there's a name for this. I don't remember, but there's a name in the military where you're not supposed to show any political partisanship. There's a name for this. Everybody in chat has probably heard this. We all heard this before. But I don't know if that subjects you to criminal penalties or if you can just be like dishonorably discharged or whatever. I don't know if dishonorable discharge carries criminal penalty. I don't think it does, right? Remember, there's a difference between being fired versus committing a crime and having your like deprivation of liberty, you know?
I mean, but real quick, you're arguing the government can. So if I were to go to Best Buy and they said, so long as you're an employee here, we expect you not to protest. That's a contract condition of employment. And it makes sense. Like the Snow White controversy, the producer's son went and reprimanded Rachel Zegler. But to go to the government and they'll say, no, we won't just fire you. We will put you in prison if you speak out against us.
So differences based on.
Is that okay? What is that? Now I need to. Law against political partisanship in military. As a veteran, any rights can technically be signed away in contracts, but the question is whether or not that contract is legally viable. If challenged, in almost all cases, there are limits. There's a name for this, like an act or a law or a thing or whatever. I thought. Fuck. Or maybe there's not a specific name for it. The Hatch Act is for government employees. You're not even supposed to wear your military uniform when attending political events. Applies to all American Armed Forces. I'm trying to think, what is the penalty for... Penalty for political partisanship while in military... Military members and federal employees who violate the Hatch Act are subject to a range of disciplinary actions, including removal or debarment from service, reduction in grade, suspension, letter of reprimand, or a fine of up to $1,000. Okay, so this sounds like, so that at most, is that fine, is that a civil penalty or criminal penalty? So you wouldn't be thrown in jail for this. It sounds like it, right?
But to go to the government and they'll say, no, we won't just fire you. We will put you in prison if you speak out against us.
So differences based on private versus public, just to be clear. So New York City human rights law that you said before actually does protect certain kinds of expressions and off-job political activity. So some states do impose those statutory frameworks that protect that kind of activity. And I think that you probably agree with a lot of those laws that say that, for example, you can't be fired if you're a Republican. Some people have
only in DC.
Only in DC.
No, I think it's only in DC actually. Yeah.
Okay. But regardless, like what we're talking about, usually the Bill of Rights does not apply as to private actors. And so we're engaging in First Amendment analysis for people who you've acknowledged have these rights. And what you're suggesting is beyond military, which can be a category of its own, and fine, I'll even accept that it's a category of its own because military is so particular or something. What you're suggesting is that even American citizens can be deprived of their rights by the government just choosing to condition certain benefits on that. And that is what I mean when I say these are our rights. When you accept certain frameworks such as his, I want to finish my statement. When you accept this framework of wide-reaching waiver, or when you say rights don't really matter that much because they're just going to be interpreted, you are signing away your own rights, not just those rights.
I'm not at all. That's a real slippery slope. That I'm talking about the rights that attach to a foreign national or a foreign visitor or someone holding a green card to an American citizen. When over and over again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go finish.
When you're trying to engage in fear porn of trying to say if we limit his rights, which the Supreme Court has already limited his rights, and saying he doesn't have the same level of rights, and that's somehow some threat to American democracy.
We keep saying that, but I don't know how
your First Amendment rights are going to be taken away. That is utter hogwash, and you know it is.
I just think it's also silly. Literally nobody cares about anyone's constitutional rights. If I want to go buy a gun, I have to waive my right against self-incrimination. The government has a requirement unto me that I waive my right. And poor Hunter Biden actually faced criminal charges because he did not want to self-incriminate as an illegal drug user, which he has no obligation to do. And I actually said, I hope he wins. I hope he challenges the Supreme Court. Do not pardon him. I want him to go to the Supreme Court and say, the government has no right to, as a condition of my right.
That's kind of shocking. Good for Tim. I wonder if Tim's going to make a turn, or he maybe's been consistent with this. Any Republican that feels strongly about firearms issues should have abhorred the Hunter Biden conviction. The idea that the government can look at a memoir that somebody's written or looked at a video and saw that you've used a drug and then know that you own firearms and say, therefore, you violated there's a form that you fill out called a 4473 where you say that you're not an unlawful user of a drug, whatever the fuck that even means, by the way. That's not even well defined. What does unlawful user mean? You've never used it. You're not currently using it. You're not high when you're filling it out. No one knows what that means. Any Second Amendment loving American should be like, the fuck what is this? This is kind of weird, no? It's wild that that's what Republicans went with.
Right to keep and bear arms to self-incriminate. Violation of the Fifth Amendment to enforce it, so that I can enjoy my second. Instead, they always do this. The courts say, or the government says, let's not let that one get to precedent because then it'll actually screw over the abuses that we have. But tell me, where is anyone ever to point out the conditions set upon all the time on all of the Bill of Rights from left and right? It's literally everybody just arguing one thing. Might makes right. That's all they're arguing.
I don't believe that's what they're arguing. I appreciate the passion.
Liberals are saying, we think Jen Ellis committed a crime. The right is saying she was just providing legal advice. Your interpretation determines whether or not a lawyer goes to prison and whether or not someone will actually seek legal counsel, or lawyers will be terrified because they're like, if I try and actually assist a politician in this case, they're going to accuse me of a crime. Yep. It happens every day that someone's going to say, in 1948, the government said it's this, therefore it's so. And then what's going to happen is they're going to get sued. The new Supreme Court's going to say, actually, we're erasing that and changing the precedent. So all that's really happening.
You're not supposed to. He should bring up the stare decisis here. It is important. There's a reason why you're not supposed to do this, right? Because if it was the case, then actually everything Tim is saying would be true. Nobody would have any trust in the courts or any trust in the rule of law because stuff would be changing so often. This is why it's important to follow prior precedents or how common law systems develop or whatever, is that you follow like the rulings that have been made over a long period of time in ordinary time by sober judges, etc.
Happening is people are playing this funny word game of I can make it sound like I'm right and you're wrong. And then this is where we're at. If you look at all of the Bill of Rights and you look at everything you're arguing, I can point to 50 for every amendment and be like, here's where the liberals have argued for and against the First Amendment. They think it's right when they do it this way and wrong when they do it. Here's where the conservatives do it. All that's really happening is, can you win an election? And what it really boils down to is how many sad moms can we show on TV? And is the economy good or bad? Then we'll get power to enforce.
I don't believe it's nihilism. I don't believe it because
it's not nihilism.
No, it's a kind of form of nihilism. These rights have no purchase. They're not. And in some sense, I agree in the sense that rights are what humans invent them, and they mean different things to different people. Absolutely, people have different interpretations. But your interpretation of the Second Amendment has purchase on you. I just saw you get very fiery and passionate about an issue that you care a lot about.
It's not Second Amendment. It's when you said, can the government condition you to waive your rights? They've done it on the Nix form. It's not a question of the gun rights. It's the existence of a form that says, if you want to exercise your right, waive your Fifth Amendment. But the scope exists right now and is protected by Democrats.
So I want to be clear. The scope of a right is always going to be subject to interpretation. You're right about that. And the First Amendment has never been thought of to be this thing, anything anyone ever says. So, for example, incitement is not protected.
Yep.
Child pornography is not protected. Obscenity is not protected.
Obscenity,
these are well-known exceptions to the First Amendment. There are doctrines, for example.
Obscenity is not protected.
It's still not protected.
Now protected.
No, it's not. Obscenity is a category of unprotected speech. Now,
so the issue is now we're dealing with obscenity as like a blue law in that no one.
Careful, fuck. Pisco's using a legal term. Obscenity is a legal distinction. If something has been decided as obscene, then by definition it's not protected. That's what obscene means. Temple probably doesn't know this. He should clarify.
It's enforcing against it.
Now, yes and no. A lot of people aren't enforcing against obscenity, but also obscenity itself is dependent on certain artistic value and natural standards. It's very.
Let me. This is actually another good point of the question of rights. There are a lot of laws in the books we never enforce anymore.
True.
Famously, there was this story about skydiving on Sunday was illegal for women in Florida, and they say it's not true. But there are a lot of laws like this. There's a book called Funny Old Laws. There was a law, I think it was in Boston, that you can't cool pies on your windowsill, and everybody laughs at it. But the reason why is because back when it was a very small community, cooling pies on your windowsill attracted animals and then caused problems. They said stop doing this. They had laws saying you can't take baths on Tuesday because the aquifer was strained. We don't enforce any of those laws anymore. They're still on the books. So we exist in a society where it really is the whim of law enforcement and the body politic. For example, in a much better example, in San Francisco, two men gave each other blowjobs in the middle of the street. This was during Pride, in full view of children and everyone else. And the police said they're allowed to do it. Well, clearly they're not. I mean, it's obscenity laws across the books in every facet ban that. Why don't the police arrest them? Because all that really matters is if the public is willing to tolerate and accept it or not. And if the people would so this is why we get leftist terrorism. The reason why we see Teslas being firebombed is because what's the end result? You're going to...
Wait, real quick. If you use quality ingredients, if you use quality ingredients while crafting other things, does that mean that you have a higher chance of getting a quality thing? Does that make sense?
See, Vancouver, for instance, booted Tesla from their auto show, saying we can't keep it safe anymore. This is the purpose of the might make right ethos, which we see dominant right now. I'm not saying Democrat liberal entirely, I'm saying predominantly far left. They're enacting that, and it is used to amplify their power and the moral worldview they have. Thus,
quality ingredients,
as it pertains to the Columbia protest, what do we see? Organizers put together these protests. Whether you want to blame them for it, physical occupation occurred, physical violence against Jews occurred, buildings were taken over, faculty complained of physical threats and violence against them. I look at this and I'm just like, how do we prevent things like this from happening? Well, we've got people having sex in the street in San Francisco and the police won't enforce it. We have buildings being taken over and it's allowed to happen for an extended period of time. Donald Trump says the guy who helped organize this is getting kicked out of the country, and every legal liberal comes out and says we can't allow that to happen. These things are all interconnected. And so the question really becomes, are you willing to enforce against things that cause damage to your moral worldview? The right tends not to. They're starting to now. The left is resistant to it. So that's my point on all of this. Say whatever you want about whatever you want. So long as you've got pride events across the country where they violate every law with gay sex in public, I'm not trying to be crude, but they do, then I'm going to sit here and be like, guys, you had a violent protest, Jews got attacked, buildings got taken over, you've got no moral ground to stand on, you're trying to cite precedents to win political power.
It's what they said about communists. It's what they said about Jan Sixers. It's what they say about all the people that the public hates. The public hates Tren de Aragua.
Did Donald Trump... You brought up Jan 6. Did the Republicans have a committee for May 29th? Did they go and set a national commission to go and hunt down...
Why did Trump say it was no big deal then?
What, May 29th?
Yeah, why is it no big deal?
He's got an ego problem.
Okay, so he lied. Did Trump lie, yes or no?
No.
Well, you just said it was a big deal.
You're asking me if Trump's opinion is a correct statement?
Was it correct? Is he lying about his actual opinion? Does Trump think it was a big deal?
I think Trump thinks it's not a big deal.
Okay, so
like I said, Republicans don't enforce it.
Is Trump wrong about whether it was a big deal or not?
100%.
Okay, so was his life in danger?
Absolutely, it was.
Okay,
that's why they brought him into a bunker.
So he's deluded for thinking that it wasn't in danger.
Absolutely, the dude has got an ego problem.
Okay.
He doesn't want to be bunker boy. They brought him into an emergency bunker because 1,000+ far leftists tore the barricades and were throwing firebombs at the White House, and we never got any account.
Prove they were throwing firebombs at the White House right now.
Okay, let me pull up the picture.
Yep.
Do you know about St. John's Church, right?
Oh yeah. This view, while you look it up, this view about rights and that it's all whatever because the gays are doing this, the left is doing this, it's all bullshit. You guys don't believe it. There are some values you guys have. No, you guys actually, I believe that you're supposed to have values, right? You have values. These rights have purchase on. You're not just going to say that only the people that I like get the rights. Is that the White House?
You're asking me if one photo from an entire article, as I'm seeking to pull up the photos, you've asked me if one image of a Lafayette building being torched by arsonists during the.
You made a specific claim, didn't you?
Would you like me to pull up the photo of the guard post and the White House grounds being set on fire?
White House grounds?
Those are videos that purport to be a guard station, but you said that they were throwing Molotov cocktails at the White House. You did say that, right?
The White House includes the grounds and the guard post.
Oh, so torching this would include throwing it at the White House, right?
What?
Remember, this is so funny. God, if Pisco brings this up, I'll donate $100 million for stream. So, the White House. Wait, is this the thing? Is there anything I'm thinking of? Oh yes. Okay. Yeah. So he said the White House, and that includes everything in the White House grounds. Okay. So he's going to say that if a building gets torched or whatever, or gets thrown out on the White House grounds, all of that counts as the White House or whatever. Do you think that Tim Pool would make that same concession about being on the Capitol grounds? Because I feel like I've heard, if not Tim Pool, other people argue those people weren't in the Capitol building; they were just on the grounds, right? Notice how, when it comes to a side he doesn't like, even attacking anything on the White House grounds is basically an attack on the White House. But for J6, well, if they didn't go in the actual building, what about the Capitol grounds? They were barricaded off. You know that, right? They were barricaded off until the Proud Boys broke through 3 different barricades to get into the restricted area, right?
We're torching this building in Lafayette Square.
The Lafayette Square maintenance building?
Yeah, so we're torching this building.
I'm specifically referring to them throwing a firebomb at the White House grounds. Here you go.
So they weren't throwing at the White House building or fence, fair?
No, what do you...
But you said they were throwing firebombs.
Stop playing semantic games. So let's clarify.
You're representing that they were attacking the White House itself with firebombs, and now you're pointing to a maintenance station. That was
you are pointing to a maintenance station.
Well, where's the evidence of attacking the White House?
Did the guard post get set on fire?
It wasn't a guard post, it was a maintenance station. That's what it says.
Whoa. You're playing games.
So you didn't think
we're not. You did not come prepared.
Yeah, I did.
So you asked me to pull up a photo. As I'm scrolling through an article, you asked me to stop and address an image you decided upon, and then you said, aha, that proves it?
Show the guard post.
I'll pull it up.
Yeah, it's one tweet, one guy that says a guard post is burned down. There's no. So have you read the report? Have you read the Parks Department post that says that it was a maintenance?
No.
What's about flailing? Have you read the Parks Department report?
Subject.
No, the report about May 29th and May 30th. Have you read the report about it?
Did you see?
Have you read the report about it? Yes or no?
Flailing.
Have you read the report about the May 29th, May 30th protest?
Tim hasn't. Tim hasn't read it, and he won't say that because he's seen articles. Tim won't answer that question. He didn't read the report. He obviously didn't read. Tim doesn't read anything.
Reflecting.
What am I talking about?
Changing the subject.
What subject am I changing?
Let's go back to, on May 29th, 1,000+ far leftists tore the barricades down, injured over 100 law enforcement officers, set fire to St. John's Church, torched several other buildings, flipped over cars.
Who's changing we were talking about whether they had thrown Molotov cocktails at the White House.
You interrupted me as I was addressing May 29th and asked me to pull up the photo, and I said I would do that.
You made a claim. You said they were attacking the White House with Molotov cocktails. You don't have evidence for that, right?
Is there an image of, you said you saw an image of the guard post on fire?
What one Twitter account said was a guard post.
I will concede that to you.
Okay.
And this is where I'm headed.
Okay.
So let's not get carried away on me. I'll say, you know what, you're right. The fire may or may not have happened, but there is a post online that purports a guard post in the White House grounds was set on fire.
Yes.
So let's just, you know what? Okay. They did not firebomb the White House. They may have, we're not entirely sure. They did tear down the barricades, attack law enforcement, 1,000+, over 100 law enforcement officers were injured, and they set fire to St. John's Church. They set fire to several buildings outside of the White House complex. And we never got a national commission or a committee from Congress. We did not get national raids on the 1,000+. 30+ people died in those riots. We never got law enforcement for 90+ days, over 100 days. Far left extremists were lobbing explosives, mortars at federal buildings. They took over.
I'm sorry, wait. I'm sorry, I missed it. Did we just expand this conversation to the entirety of the BLM riots? Because there were tons of investigations. There were tons of people. I think over 11,000 arrests over all of that. There were convicted. Like, what did we just? 30 people died. He's talking about the entirety of all the BLM riots across the entire United States now.
Locations in Seattle, Portland, Minnesota, and Atlanta in autonomous zones.
You call them insurrections, sir?
Well, May 29th is insurrection.
Wait. You did call the Black Lives Matter situations insurrections, right?
May 29th.
Or did you?
May 29th.
Yeah.
Pisco should just keep repeating it. I know it feels uncomfortable, but I mean, even I feel uncomfortable doing it. But like this, the refusal of any of these guys to answer a question, like just answer it, yes or no. Did they? Yes or no? Hello?
You keep doing that.
Yes.
Okay. I refer to.
Yeah, he keeps doing it because he's trying to get you to actually take an actual position, a solid position on literally anything, instead of just like hopping around because you know you've been caught.
Seattle, Portland, Minnesota, and Atlanta, and then asked me if those were all insurrections.
You said I have the videos of them.
The May 29th insurrection was in front of the White House when they ripped the barricades down and forced the president into a bunker.
Okay, whose fault is it that we don't have a report on that and a committee on that?
Republicans.
Okay, is it also Trump's fault?
Yes.
Okay, and also to be clear, since you said this was an insurrection, you agree Jan 6 was an insurrection, fair?
No.
Why not?
Jan 6 is an insurrection insofar as May 29th is, yes.
Okay, do you think May 29th was an insurrection?
No.
What's your definition of insurrection?
So the point being made at the time, in the video you're referencing, is that if the Democrats are going to form a committee, accuse the rioters of the Capitol building of being engaged in insurrection, my response is, okay, then May 29th was also an insurrection.
But Tim, Dan Bongino, other commentators on the right, I have clips of them, all called the George Floyd situations insurrections. You did, before Jan 6. So using your...
No, we didn't.
Yes, I have the clips.
Completely wrong.
You're on it saying these are insurrections.
No.
All right, I'll produce that for you. And everyone can
Please.
follow. My Twitter account is Pisco Liddy. I'll produce the video of you calling them insurrections. Not only
Before January 6th.
Before January 6th. Not only did you do that, you have tweets about it.
You're saying that before January 6th happened, I referred to George Floyd as an insurrection.
Yes, you did. You said insurrection.
Does anybody have a link to the tweets?
With respect to Washington. If you did do that, Tim, wouldn't you be duty bound to also call January 6th insurrection under your then existing standard?
No.
Why not? If you were willing to call it out before Jan 6, why wouldn't you call Jan 6 an insurrection?
We're talking about two different circumstances.
Oh my
I know
God.
we're comparing them in your standard for one, where you were before Jan 6 willing to call them insurrectionists.
You're presupposing that I challenged that.
Sorry, if you did call those things insurrections, were you wrong then?
If before January 6th, I referred to people taking over city blocks as insurrections.
Were you wrong to do so?
In the context of January 6th, no.
No. At the time, were you wrong? And did you disavow your statements?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. So, given that you assume you did, wouldn't, under the standard that you applied to these individuals in Seattle, Portland, all that situation, wouldn't Jan 6 also be an insurrection under your standard, your pre-Jan 6 standard?
No.
Why? Well, so what's more insurrection about the Portland situation, or the courthouse in Portland, versus Jan 6?
How long was were the city blocks in various cities occupied?
It depends.
Several weeks to months.
So it's the length of it? That's length?
Several weeks to months. Where did this happen besides Chaz? Did this happen in any place besides Chaz?
Is the difference in insurrection?
Well, first, you're presupposing that I used the word insurrection.
You did, but we're assuming that as a predicate.
Right, and I challenge that. It may have been the case, and I would argue this. The term insurrection as applied from January 6 on was very specific. The intention of individuals to stop an official proceeding to keep a president in power. That was the definition of what insurrection was. My argument after that is, if you were going to argue that January 6, which included a large group of rioters and a large group of peaceful protesters all wrapped up in the same thing, then I would argue, let's also get a commission on May 29th. And I met Republicans for continually avoiding it and doing nothing about it.
And Trump
that being said, Trump himself, I think Trump's strategy was let the left burn it down so I can win an election. I think he was wrong to do so. I think he should have invoked the Insurrection Act and crushed these motherfuckers and locked them in prison.
Which act?
Insurrection Act.
Yeah, so, but assuming that you did call it an insurrection beforehand.
Perhaps that's what you're confusing.
Yeah. No, I'm not confused about that. So I understand the Insurrection Act could apply to non-insurrections.
I think that's where the confusion
No, it is not, because I understand those nuances, and listen, when I use the term insurrection, I have these, I'm going to say, very in the weeds debates about the term insurrection and what it means, and so I try to look and use an originalist lens on what insurrection means. But I'm using your standards. I'm using your standards. You called certain Black Lives Matter riots and absolutely out of control, and I also would call some.
Let's clarify that. If insurrection is, as defined by the Insurrection Act, as applied to the BLM riots, it is when local law enforcement is not upholding the law. The president.
Hold on, real quick. This is what Pisco had linked before in his Twitter, like half a year ago.
Attacked. They demanded his resignation, and all he did was make it worse, make everything worse. But I truly believe that's his intent. Take a look at this story from Katu 2. Tear gas deployed, Mayor Wheeler in the middle, fire outside federal courthouse. Okay, I want to read this for you. I also have a thread that shows you, a Twitter thread showing you all that happened with Mayor Ted Wheeler. And I got to tell you, man, the government of Portland has now joined insurrection against the federal government. A lot of people, I see a lot of these lefties getting mad because I'm saying insurgent and insurrection and stuff, but it's difficult to figure out how to describe a group of people that keeps going to the federal courthouse and attacking it. I understand it's not like they're showing up with live ammo or anything, but they're showing up with weapons and explosives. Oof. That's just a reality. Mortar shell explosive, commercial grade fireworks are extremely dangerous. They spray fireballs everywhere. So you can start fires with them, especially if you throw it inside. The feds are defending their courthouse. Now, if you follow most progressives and even the mainstream media, they won't tell you this. They won't show you the photo. Look at this photo right here. What we're seeing is an overhead shot. Here's the street. Here are the people. This is a massive fire covering the entire sidewalk. The fires that are being set are huge. And the feds typically come out, in many videos, you'll see them come out with fire extinguishers to put out fires. And then they push back the crowds. The crowds then attack back and claim that they are being repressed. Show for their friends incarcerated inside. Fair point, I think. I don't think these fireworks are actually going to cause significant damage to the outside of the building. But what do? The fireworks will cause damage, and the buildings are barricaded. But what do? Sit back? They've breached the courthouse now. So I don't know if he wrote this yesterday, and now they've breached the courthouse. What would you say? Perhaps the reason they started firing at the insurrectionists, we're going to call them fanatics, was because, not necessarily because of the commercial grade fireworks, but because they were trying to breach the courthouse. There's videos posted by Evans himself and by Andy No and many others going back quite a ways where they're trying to break the barricades down. And there's actually a video of them tearing the wood off of the barricades, protecting the glass. There's a video of them with a fire extinguisher trying to bash the glass. And Evans himself notes this right here. You see, this is, as far as I'm concerned, official government joining in engaging in the insurrection against, oh, I'm sorry, okay, I now remember exactly what the point I was trying to make.
With the diligent valor?
Yeah, the court documents said that the far left breached the courthouse on July 4th.
Okay.
That these people, insurrectionists, entered federal jurisdiction, and that prompted the deployment of these officers, to the federal agents, to go out and start clearing things out.
Right, they weren't there until they broke into the
On
federal
July 4th,
building. Right,
the 39th day of writing. And so that was the response. If Ted Wheeler stands the police down as police commissioner, which he did, if the AG is suing in defense of the far left, then you have this guy now coming out, the mayor, joining in the riots, lying about it, getting tear gassed, basically assisting.
Okay, so Tim definitely was using insurrection, but okay. Maybe he just forgot all that.
The president has the right to bring in the National Guard to enforce local law.
They don't define insurrection in the Insurrection Act, but there are a lot of circumstances,
So let's
including what you just outlined.
Let's clarify for the purpose of what we're actually trying to discuss.
Yep.
This word can be applied in different contexts. In the context of the BLM riots, were this to be an insurrection, it applies to the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act is when local law enforcement is not enforcing the law, the president has a right to call in the National Guard to enforce local law. I believe that Donald Trump should have invoked the Insurrection Act, and in that context, what they engaged in was insurrection. Local law enforcement was not enforcing the law and was allowing far-left extremists to use violence, firebombs, and physical assault against individuals, government buildings, and otherwise. In the context of January 6th, they said these are people trying to overthrow the government itself, and that's an insurrection. The argument that...
they?
Democrats, the J6 committee. If the argument is that if you want to use the insurrection as defined by the Insurrection Act, and that is DC
doesn't define it.
Exactly. So we can only apply the context of the law does. If Donald Trump were to have called the National Guard on January 6th because he deemed an insurrection happening,
Call it insurrection?
in that regard, I would say in that context, yes. So understanding what we're talking about is a core element of what these debates always tend to be. So again, in the context of the Insurrection Act, it specifically refers to when local law enforcement doesn't uphold the law. In reference to January 6th, it is a group of people trying to overthrow the government. And that's how it's applied to the 14th Amendment. So I would not say that the individuals in Portland were trying to overthrow the government necessarily. It's a riot, just like J6 was.
I mean, they established an autonomous zone.
Certainly. And they took over police buildings.
In Oregon,
How
they
was
were
that
trying to
not-
tear down the courthouses. And it was in
Certainly.
Wait,
And they
Hassan was at this debate?
took over police buildings.
In Oregon, they were trying to tear down the courthouses, and it was in Washington that they took over for weeks, and they called it the Chaz, and then the Chop.
But wait a second, folks. I mean,
And to me, that is
how is it not an insurrection?
that's utterly an insurrection.
Okay.
If you take over a police station, that's an insurrection. If you
If you take over the police station as an insurrection, what about the Capitol?
This guy, dude.
they weren't trying to seize the Capitol.
What were they trying to do? Just murder people inside?
It was like
It has to be a permanent takeover of the police
What
office.
I'm saying is when they come marching in there, the same way people in the 6 previous elections, at least 3 or 4, going back to Gore v. Bush, there have been people who have been coming in there and screamed that they were unhappy with the way things were happening, and were removed by the Capitol Police.
Yeah, so I have a definition of insurrection that would include some things and exclude other things.
It doesn't become insurrection simply because there's thousands of you who are like that individual there. So no, there was no plan. There was no plan that we're taking over the government. There's no plan that we're gonna.
There was literally a plan. It was literally spelled out in documents. There was literally seditious conspiracy convictions over it. So he's literally lying. But
We're gonna remove Mike Pence. There was no plan like
I dispute that. But I think we should step back because I know it's fun to talk about the term insurrection, but really what Tim is getting at is what his perceived inconsistency on the left wing and the right wing with respect to rights. So what we're here about is rights, and I don't think, and I think that you agree that rights mean more to you than just what the majority of the population thinks.
I disagree with his assessment.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think that it's like if I'm sitting here, I'm like, now because I'm in power, I want to have more of this. I do everything I can to remain as consistent as possible. There are times that I've seen Trump do things that I say, this is wrong. He did one of this week he endorsed Lindsey Graham as senator. To me, that should have been a violation of his First Amendment rights right there, just uttering that phrase. So yeah,
Lindsey Graham's pretty pro-Israel.
I don't care. See, what are you racist? You assume
not
because I'm
racist.
Jewish?
I know that
because
you're
I'm Jewish that I
Stop
must be
it, stop it.
pro-Israel.
Oh, now you
When
guys
have you
are
heard me
sensitive.
express that? No. Why would you assume?
You say you're very pro-Israel.
I know.
It's a public
Actually,
position.
what I'm saying is you're just coming out there and saying because someone is pro-Israel, that means I like
didn't say that
Lindsey
because
Graham.
no.
That's
tongue in cheek. Don't act offended.
No,
You're
what
not
I'm saying is you're just
Oh
drawing
my
these
God.
conclusions.
No one's drawing conclusions.
Left in general, I've never been racist enough to be a Democrat.
Let's try this. Let's just try this. How do we reconcile that problem I already mentioned?
Yep.
The NICS forms requires you to waive your Fifth Amendment rights.
for the military.
No. This is anyone in the United States who wants to buy a gun must waive their Fifth Amendment rights in order to exercise their second.
Yeah, so what the court tells us to look at, because I'm going to take the Supreme Court and their precedent, it says you look at the time of the founding and the enactment of the Second Amendment, what were the kinds of regulations that were in place there that the framers would have considered part of their Second Amendment rights. No one thinks that these rights are absolute in all circumstances. For example, no one thinks that the Second Amendment prevents us from having laws that prevent access to felons or prevent laws that prevent access of guns to the mentally incompetent. These are well-established.
I disagree. I think they protect that.
So you think that felons and mentally
Okay.
incompetent people have a right to possess weapons?
Under the Second Amendment, yes. Because it clearly states the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say unless we at some point deem them to be. Now, to be fair, there is the argument of due process. The reason why felons can have guns is because the Constitution guarantees due process. All rights can be curtailed following due process.
So you think that felons should have the right to have guns, but that green card holders don't have the right to speak? I mean,
No, I just literally said due process can strip you of your rights. You can have your right to freedom of movement, freedom of speech, everything curtailed if you are in violation of law. In fact, you could be enslaved. The 13th Amendment explicitly allows you to be a slave if you jaywalk. I'm not kidding.
I know. Yeah, pull it up.
The 13th Amendment says any crime. It doesn't specify felonies or misdemeanors, meaning you can commit a petty offense by not returning a library book, and that gives the government the right to enslave you. Granted, those things don't get enforced that way.
Well, would you consider like?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that someone who gets a green card has more rights, should have more rights than a felon?
Depends on.
Because I actually think that's such an immoral position. To me, I look at it as someone coming from the right, and I say to myself, look, the same way I have someone in my house, and if someone's in my house and I invite them into my house, there's an expectation they're going to comport themselves with a certain level of conduct. I came in here before and I said, what is accepted protocol during the show here? Because I'm a visitor here in Tim Pool's studio. If I'm Tim Pool's kid, there's a different standard where even if I violate that, if I violate it here, he's going to throw me out of here. And as you would agree, is his right. If I'm his kid, though, in that case, if his kid is now he grows up and is 14 years, is 12 years old, 10 years old, and he says, I'm going to no longer support you any longer, we would say that is something that could be criminal.
Let me give you what you want. I do agree. American citizens have more rights than green card.
Well,
I do agree with that.
Well, thank God we got to that.
But not as so far as the First
they're not
Amendment.
consensus, right? So I think felons have some rights that green card holders don't have, and I think green card holders have some rights that felons don't have. For example, felons don't necessarily have free speech rights to go and protest and stuff, right? Yeah. So just because I think they're not overlapping. But these are ways in which, importantly and critically, green card holders and aliens have different rights. For example, you can't exile a U.S. citizen if they commit a crime. You can exile.
You should be able to.
You think that you should be able to exile American citizens out?
I would prefer it instead of capital punishment. I think capital punishment is worse than exile. I don't trust the state to kill people. The example I like to
I don't know if he's going to but the problem is you can't have a country that makes stateless people. It's just a huge clusterfuck for everybody around the world to deal with. It's just nobody wants to deal with stateless people. It's just too much.
give to conservatives who tend to be pro-death penalty is imagine Kamala Harris pointing at someone saying, trust me, that guy should die. They would never believe it. I would prefer it if, when it came to capital offenses, we just said, we're going to put you on a boat and kick you
Why
off.
not just be against both? Why can't you can be against both?
What do you do with these people then?
Keep them in prison.
Who's paying for it?
I guess we are.
So you're asking people who want to kill. So here's me looking at a group of people and they say, that person raped and murdered a child, they should die. And I say, no. We don't trust the state.
I'm glad you say that, but
I don't like that person. I think what they did is evil beyond belief. And if we were to
Let's
catch,
unleash them on the world.
let's throw them to other countries.
yeah. Well, to other countries. My point is,
wait, do you want to release like child rapists into Cuba?
so the argument would be that presupposition is that
Who
you
would
trust the
take
government
these people?
explicitly and implicitly. Do you?
I don't trust the government.
So if Donald Trump came to you and said Mahmoud Khalil is a rapist and a child murderer, would you say, okay, Trump, you're right?
I'd say prove it.
Exactly.
Prove it, yeah.
And now
In
what
court.
if he said, we have circumstantial evidence that I believe proves it beyond a reasonable doubt, but nothing definitive, no video, but enough to where a jury of Americans say, we believe that he should be killed.
Wait, no, proof beyond a reasonable doubt we have?
Yes.
Then put it in front of a jury and it'll be a conviction.
Okay, so my point is, I don't believe the state should be able to murder people.
Okay.
There are, with certain exceptions. That is, a police officer literally watching someone about to rape and murder a child uses
Yeah,
force
but
to stop.
that's self-defense and that's imminent.
The issue I take largely is, in many circumstances, we see that, I don't want to get into a death penalty debate, but here
But why do you want to send child rapists to other countries?
because they're not child rapists. The issue
That's
is,
the example you gave.
because I'm trying to choose the most evil thing imaginable, but the what you're putting there is, you trust the government implicitly when they
I
choose
don't,
someone.
but I also don't want
In
to
which
send
case?
child rapists to fucking Cuba.
Neither do I.
So then why do you want to send exile, a bunch of fucking hardened criminals to other countries?
Because you're assuming they're hardened criminals, and that's not my point.
Oh.
And I'm not saying to other countries. I mean, what country would?
Where would you exile them? Fucking Antarctica?
Yeah. let me ask you a question. Are you for the death penalty?
No.
So you would ask other people to pay the bill for child rapists?
Yes.
And what if they say we refuse to do that, we're going to kill them?
I would say you can't.
What if they outvote you and they do it anyway?
I guess they would outvote me and they would kill him.
I feel like the issue I take is not, of course, in the defense of evil. It is obviously if someone is about to engage in an act of great bodily harm or death against another person, we actually reserve universally the right to stop that person. Well, actually, I would say
That's way different than the courts are not here to stop somebody necessarily from like doing a bad thing. It's there to like that could be like a side effect. Like what's the word I'm looking for? Deterrence, right? Could be a side effect. But the goal for courts is to punish somebody for an action they've already done, generally, right?
the left largely doesn't. But a lot of people on the left, the liberals, and almost all of conservatives do agree. If someone's about to engage in great bodily harm, you have the right to
self-defense. But here we're talking about someone who's been duly convicted, whether it's murder of a child, rape of a child. I don't want to throw them in. I want to exile them and make it so they're free. Put them in but then that's like the death penalty. Do they not have any food there? Or like, do they have servants there? I guess
none.
So you're killing them by banishing them to a place where there's no.
Maybe.
Okay, you're in favor of death penalty. Just favor
like
death
the
penalty by
Dark
starvation and exposure.
Maybe.
No, you're not. You're not.
No. I'm saying maybe they'll die. Yeah, maybe.
Okay, but should we be? Okay, so maybe they'll die.
I can't believe I got the liberal arguing for the death penalty.
No, wait. I'm against both exile. I'm against both exile, and I'm against a U.S. citizen, and I'm against.
Well, fair point. I'll concede you this. Exile is much more difficult in today's day and age because there's national boundaries everywhere.
Yeah.
But my argument would be penal colony is preferable to
death penalty.
So
then
perhaps
you're paying for it anyway, right?
We'll put it this way. Perhaps we actually would agree largely that we want life imprisonment. We just disagree on the extent of how we actually implement
Should
it.
it be in America or should it be in a penal colony in some horrible place? But then it's just.
Maybe it's not a horrible place. Maybe it's just you don't get the luxuries of society. I'm not saying nice, but I got to be honest. Like an island with a 20 mile
It's a
circumference.
good drink, bro.
The Smidges are good.
Yeah.
I don't trust the government, and I don't like the idea that innocent people are killed. And there is a high percentage, think it's over 1% of death penalty cases end up being innocent people.
What if it's an innocent person exiled to Antarctica to die?
And that's horrifying.
And I appreciate that about you, and I respect that. I want to move to one issue then. If you care about due process and you care about the innocent being faced with consequences they don't deserve, can't you condemn the Alien Enemies Act deportations, where these guys, they're not even given a hearing. They're just being thrown into a slave colony in El Salvador. How can you say that you're okay? You want to make sure that we have this robust process where some of these people are claiming they're trying to flee Trinidad. That's bad.
So the issue I see largely is you and I completely disagree as to the constitutionality of the arrest of Jenna Ellis.
Okay.
Oh
is,
my
is that
God.
irreconcilable on every single issue? Can't we have common ground on this?
This is the easiest and one example I can cite, though there are many others, in which I feel the establishment state, which includes neocons, although the neocons have now joined the Democratic Party, have waged war on the American people for the purpose of power. They are violating the Constitution. They do it every single day. Donald Trump is responding with commensurate force against forces that were enacted against him and his movement.
Against some people who could be innocent.
So my point is this. First of all, they're all illegal immigrants.
We don't know that. Do you know that?
There has been no argument presented and all information released by the administration as to those it deported.
We don't have a full accounting of everyone on there. The government admitted in the oral argument.
And I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And I've since it started agreed Trump needs to release a list of every person he's deporting to prove to the public these are non-citizens.
Even illegal immigrants under the INA have rights even to expedited removal procedures. One thing that Trump is doing that Joe Biden didn't do is he extended expedited removal to its maximal
Agreed.
scope.
But here's my point. Joe Biden created, and so did Obama, paths to legality in the United States that some would argue are extra legal, notably DACA. So that's not congressionally approved action. That was an executive order.
True.
So the view on the right would be, during the Obama administration and during the Biden administration, they created special provisions that seemingly violate the moral foundation of this country and our laws to bring in as many immigrants as possible. Claiming that everybody who came here was an asylee is an affront to reality in that many of these people, some of them came from Africa. Certainly you can want to flee Africa, but Brazil is awesome. And Mexico is awesome.
But asylee status is based on whether you're persecuted. And you can be persecuted in Brazil, you can be persecuted in Africa.
Exactly. But if you're from Africa and you come to Brazil where you're no longer persecuted, and then you have to go through every single country, and none of those countries do stop. Or more importantly, when the caravans were passing through Mexico, and Mexico offered all of them asylum, and they all said no, that is an affront to the goodwill of the American people.
It's also not compliant with asylee law, where you have to stop at the first safe harbor states, and so they no longer are asylee when they get here.
But my point is that you asked me about Donald Trump's deportation of Trinidad and
Alleged.
My argument is we need transparency on the issue. So long as the Trump administration does, that's my biggest criticism. My criticism of Mahmoud Khalil and the other protesters is saying they align with Hamas for having opinions that are critical of Israel is ridiculous. Just because you don't like what Israel's doing doesn't mean you support Hamas. That being said, if you did support Hamas, you can argue that. But still,
Wait, so if he didn't support Hamas, you would be against his deportation?
clarify. What do you mean?
So if he didn't support Hamas, and by your lights, he just supported
I don't know that he supported Hamas.
No, right. So assume that he didn't support Hamas under your lights, whatever that is.
I'm in favor of deportation because what I'm saying of Donald Trump is he's using commensurate force in deportation that Biden and Obama used for importation.
So this is green card holder. So green card holder, where you said there's a difference between Hamas support and Palestinian support. So in the situation in which
Oh,
in the situation
shit.
Okay, deport him.
He's not a legal green card holder.
Let me say it one more time. Obama and Biden used special provisions, executive order, and outright violations of the law to bring in millions of people. And Donald Trump isn't even going that far in the deportations. There are questions and criticisms of the Trinidad deportations. There's judges' hearings over these things. I will say right now, I demand transparency from the Trump administration. I do not accept the blanket, trust us, we just did it.
But they're in court saying we don't even need to tell the court. They're saying we don't even need to.
Right, but they wouldn't need to tell an Administrative Procedure Act. Are you talking about the Alien Enemies?
No, well, that's an APA claim. The one in the DC circuit system. They're saying in court we don't have to even tell you when the flights took off, even though they're parading, they're tweeting. Marco Rubio is retweeting this. Oops.
And so let's just call that commensurate.
So what's good for the goose, good for the gander?
No, it's all bad. It's all bad.
No, it's not good for the goose, good for the gander. It's remedying the problem that they illegally made. That's the point Tim is
People could
making.
be innocent.
Indeed. And the problem is Obama and Biden's fault.
This argument, I don't even know what we're talking about right now. This is wacky, weird shit. So because you think that Biden and Obama brought in people illegally, now we can just deport whoever the fuck to make up for it? This is the dumbest. This is just what. Okay. If that was your position, you should have said at the very beginning, and then we wouldn't have to waste the time on all these boring legal arguments. You just say, oh, we don't give a fuck what they do, whether it's legal or not, because it's revenge for what Biden and Obama did. It's okay. Also, I don't know why we're bringing Obama in here when Obama deported a fuck ton of people, but okay.
We are in a conflict situation with seemingly no resolution that will satisfy anybody.
Why don't you pass a law then? Republicans control Congress.
I agree.
If you want to rescind asylee status or say that we have no procedures or whatever, pass a law. It's very clear under established Supreme Court precedent they have no right to be here.
I said the same thing to what Obama and Biden did. Why instead of opening the southern border and saying just claim you're an asylum seeker and we'll let it go? You know what I got a problem with? Donald Trump deporting alleged Trinidad. I am still sitting here being like, I want transparency on this issue, and I will tell them to their faces when I see them, and I will say it, give the public a list and prove it, because we want to believe you're doing something that's right, but as long as you pretend it's going to be in secret and you refuse to tell us who's actually being deported, we have problems here. They've released partial lists, you're correct. But when the news report comes out about a barber or this runner being deported because of criminals, do not care. Do not exploit the goodwill of this country. Do not lie to our faces that you need asylum when you're coming here for economic status. But more importantly, I would prefer it didn't happen. I don't want to see a gay barber in El Salvador.
He might have been persecuted. Gay people are persecuted.
Indeed, and he could have stayed in Mexico. Mexico's awesome.
Yeah, but that's a substantive thing, because there could be reasons why it doesn't count as a safe country under the law. But even if it does, and even if, because that would be an argument that says his asylum claim is a loser.
I don't care.
Even if his asylum claim is a loser, doesn't he have a right under your very same framework that says that you want to protect people who are, improperly accused, you want to protect even people who do child rape from the death penalty.
No.
From the death penalty.
No. You are absolutely misunderstanding.
No, from the death penalty, sorry.
The death penalty is that evil people get what's coming to them, but the state can be included among evil people. It's not that I want to protect those people. It's that I'm concerned the innocent will die because the state wants innocent people to die.
Right, and in order to protect the innocent, you're protecting
bad people.
Bad people, right?
As Benjamin Franklin
Right,
and Blackstone said, it's better the guilty go free than the innocent suffer.
Well, there you go. So
you are
they're
not innocent when you illegally enter this country.
But this guy's not alleged to have illegally entered the country.
Yes, he is.
He's alleged to have presented himself at a border for inspection and admission. And
No, or Pisco is Tim is going to say every single. Remember, we said this yesterday. To a conservative, they'll play games around like who's allowed in or visa or asylum or whatever, but conservatives truly don't believe in the asylum process. Conservatives don't believe anybody should be in this country from asylum seeking. They're all illegal. Every asylum seeker is an illegal immigrant. That's what Tim is getting at.
claimed asylum. That's
Exploitation.
What do you mean exploitation?
Joe Biden opened the border to tens of millions of people and just said, leave. We know they're not.
He opened the border. Okay, explain
Indeed.
that.
Well, you take a look at these two administrations, how different they are. Within a month of Trump getting in, border crossings dropped to a few thousand. They've got MRAPs and
That's a
tanks now
lie,
patrolling the border.
man.
No one's coming across anymore. What happened to all the asylum seekers? They don't need asylum anymore now that Trump's saying you got to go through the port legally. They're not going to the border in Mexicali and Mexico and saying I'm an asylum seeker. They just stopped coming.
So you're alleging that Joe Biden
We're
did not
lying.
enforce immigration law? I mean, he was
The fact.
He's deporting more people than Trump is.
He deported a lot of people, but here's a fact. CBP, as reported on The View of all places, children were coming across the border with numbers on their arms to be sold into sex slavery. And the CBP under Biden were instructed to facilitate that. And there were people driving vans who knew what's happening. You got a problem with it? Take it up with The View and Dr. Phil. They're the ones who reported it.
Yeah, so first of all, Dr. Phil's a fucking, I have people
And
in my,
blame that-
wait, I have people in my life.
head
I
of the
just wanna say,
CBP union
I have people
who
in
said
my
it on
life.
camera.
I have people in my life who like Dr. Phil's content, so I'll save the aspersion. Listen, there's very big differences in immigration policy, no doubt, but something I would hope that we would have agreement on, regardless of how bad you think, even assume Joe Biden opened the doors to illegal immigration. Things should be done the right way, not the wrong way. If you want to have summary removals, then pass a law that allows for that. Or, right, because you took issue with DACA, right? You took issue with DACA?
Indeed.
So shouldn't you be consistent and say, well, I don't support excesses of executive power when it's done in favor of immigration or against it? Be consistent.
The issue is, and the point I'm bringing up, the reason why Trump is doing the things he's doing, and the difficult moral position I find myself in is, Biden did many things which were destructive to this country, and Trump is reversing those things. Biden did a whole, imagine it this way. There's a great tower that every administration puts blocks on top of. It is growing greater every single time. We add laws, we add executive orders, we rarely rescind them. The more that gets added to it, the greater the instability begins to wobble far to the right, then far to the left, and eventually the whole thing goes crumbling down. How do we deal with a mass influx of 10, I'm going to use the low number, 10 million non-citizens? Donald Trump says, first,
Over a year? You think it's over
4 years.
Okay.
Some estimate 20.
A lot of these
I'm using the low estimate.
a lot of these are recatches, and they're not. We don't think that 10 million over 4 years actually.
No, some people estimate 20 million.
You think 20 million?
I don't. I'm using the low estimate of 10 million. So the ranges are 10 to 20 million.
Here we're calculating like estimated border crossings aren't necessarily coextensive with individuals who are coming and staying here permanently.
Indeed, it could be more. Because apprehensions and interactions don't mean some people got through. So we're dealing with the ramifications of this both in the census, which means congressionally, in the Electoral College, how it structures our government, how we deal with...
Republicans are doing great on that. On the front of the census, Republicans are doing fantastic. In the next census, it's not going to be enough if Kamala wins Michigan,
Indeed.
Wisconsin. So they're doing fine.
So
it's not a big threat to the allocation, the representation.
It certainly
of
is.
immigrants.
Saying that Republicans may win does not change the fact that California gets an extra vote for the president through non-citizenship.
But Texas has a shit ton of.
Indeed. No, none of it. Nobody should have that. I don't care if you're a
So
Republican or
it's not
Democrat.
really distorting our democracy in that way based on.
It is.
How can you say that if you don't know, right? Is it really the case that Democrat states have more illegal immigrants than
Yes.
Republican?
They're called sanctuary states and they don't enforce...
I thought the argument was always that Republicans are bearing a bigger brunt. Republican states have to, the border states, Texas,
California has
Florida.
more illegal immigrants than other states. Blue states are sanctuary states that don't enforce immigration law, and that's why Greg Abbott was sending them there, and that's why I said it was a stupid thing to do. Because what it
It was
does...
a brilliant thing to do. You think it was stupid?
Absolutely. It was funny in a lot of sense. Like the Martha's Vineyard thing was funny. If these people want to be a sanctuary, then we will transport them and they can provide aid and assistance. The problem is, as I've said, all this does is bolster their numbers in the census and give them extra votes for president. All of these things are issues. We have gone over and we do have to go because I got to give a shout out to Jeremy Hambley because we're going to be rating Jeremy Hambley's show right now. But what my point ultimately is, I think I made it a million times. Donald Trump is going to do things that are seemingly drastic the left will be angry about. But the left did similarly drastic things. So what we're getting is two sides arguing God is on my side effectively. I mean, figuratively, not literally. The left says we are morally right in how we've done this. You are morally wrong for how you do it. The right is saying the inverse. The question is who will muster up the political might to actually succeed? Abraham Lincoln arrested the Maryland legislature, large portions of it, for being sympathetic to the Confederates. He suspended habeas corpus. No one calls him a dictator except for the Confederates. Today, it's a difficult question. It is.
I think he was a tyrant.
And
I think Abraham Lincoln was one of the worst presidents we ever had.
He
ended up being in the perfect place to do a necessary thing, which was ultimately free the slaves.
So if Trump violates a court order,
he was a tyrant in the way.
So if Trump violates a court order, like Lincoln is alleged to have.
No. Not every court order is a legal court order.
If he violates,
not every court order
if he violates
is
a court order,
Like imagine that, like Abraham Lincoln was a tyrant, but Donald Trump hasn't done anything wrong. Like it's just like this is like deeply unserious, so fucking stupid.
it's not commitments because I think if we're being consistent, if you're calling him a tyrant,
Not every court order is a
if he
legal
violates
court
a court order from a federal appellate court,
not every court order from a federal
Only the
appellate
Supreme
court. No, even a Supreme Court could in theory issue an illegal order. That's right.
As per, like this is a layman's argument. Like this is somebody who doesn't know anything about law arguing this. A Supreme Court could issue an order that's illegal. Illegal as per who? Who determines that? Like what do you understand what you're saying when you even say that? I don't understand what. Please ask him that. Who determines if it's illegal or not?
Even the Supreme Court, because if in fact the Constitution says that they don't have a certain right to something, and a federal judge, district court judge, completely disregards what's written in the statute, would you agree with me that this black letter statute which says something, and a federal judge disregards that, and he issues an order in complete opposition to what is expressly written word for word? Would you agree that's an illegal order?
I agree with Marbury v. Madison, which says it's emphatically the providence and duty of the judicial department to say
it
what
has to be a reasonable interpretation of an ambiguous
according
term.
to Trump.
So
Yes, thank you. According to who? Reasonable interpretation according to who? What are you saying here? It's up to the executive to determine if the judiciary has given a reasonable interpretation?
I'm not saying to overturn. Marbury v. Madison just gives the power to the court to overturn the statute. They're not overturning the statute. If they read a statute as the inverse.
That Marbury v. Madison is not just where is this? Why? I don't understand where these conservatives have like reinterpreted every single like bedrock foundational principle in this country recently. It's so weird. Marbury v. Madison just says that the providence of the courts is to determine what is the law, like not just to overturn a statute. What the fuck does that even mean? Congress can overturn a statute by passing a new law. What do you?
So what the written words of the statute means, and the district court judge were to do that. So I'm going to do this. You know what? I don't care that it says this. I don't care what the statute says. I'm going to write this. That would be an illegal order. If that illegal order got affirmed at the circuit level, that would still be an illegal order.
And if the Supreme Court orders Trump,
if the Supreme Court in fact did it, that still would be an
and you
illegal
wouldn't.
order.
And so you're telling us right now that if the Supreme Court orders Trump to do something and he defies it, you're not going to commit to condemning that action of him defying.
Correct. He's not. See, that's a good layout, right? This is what I'm saying, right? That no action will ever be condemned by Donald Trump. Because look, Good Logic just laid out his brain poisoning right here. He just laid out the cult programming, right? Well, because what he might say is Trump should follow the courts, but only insofar as the courts are issuing things that are legally coherent. And then if the court issues something that Trump doesn't like, then people like Good Logic will say, oh, well, it wasn't a legally coherent order. That was an unlawful thing by the courts, as determined by Donald Trump. It's
him defying the Supreme Court.
Oh, on a political level, as far as a legal level, you ask me in any given
and whatever
hypothetical. You ask me
whatever
any given hypothetical. What I will tell you is this. Because I'll tell you this. As far as on a political level, I think that it's probably very foolish for him to disregard that. I think that.
Would you condemn him?
Would I condemn him? You can't give me a hypothetical order.
Okay.
I can't do that.
You can't consider a hypothetical. Like, and also like this, I've never heard anybody be as bad, I think, as. No, I have. It's Good Logic here where he's like, he just refuses. I can't consider a hypothetical where a president is defying an order from the court. That's just like.
It really depends on the scenario. There are many scenarios where I could see condemning Trump. I have condemned him in certain scenarios where I thought what he's doing was politically wrong or was
politically wrong?
Was unethical or illegal. I don't have a problem condemning him. I think that he happens to do phenomenal work as our president. He is exceptional president.
That's not what we're talking about.
You can try and label him whatever you want. He is the most efficient president, which in the first 100 days of this presidency, we're only 75 days in, and he's been exceptional. But I still can condemn him if he makes a mistake. The same way I made a joke about Lindsey Graham, I'll condemn him if he does something wrong.
I just want to say, because you called Trump a degenerate. You know, when you look at Donald Trump, he's had multiple wives. He's had different children from different wives.
Not for that. The personal stuff is whatever. But it's for his violence on the Constitution, the rule of law, and authoritarianism. That's why he's.
Oh, okay. I mean, I feel like it's.
Tim's going to say he either won't address it because he doesn't want to get into it, or he'll say, well, all the presidents do this. Everybody does this. Both sides do it.
Of a stretch to use the word degenerate. I don't mind if you want to criticize him for your view on that.
Degenerating the Constitution and the rule of law in the country.
I was going to say, like, if
absolutely not. This constitutional crisis we have right now is 100% the exclusive fault of the judiciary. When the judiciary steps out of its bounds and says, "Hey, I'm going to start implementing national policy on this thing over here because you know what? I'm some judge from Rhode Island, and there's a national order, there's a universal order which is affecting the entire country, and even though it's really only affecting
what is a federal district? What is jurisdiction? It's all these are just like the most ridiculously most insane whatever.
I don't know, 1% of the national population here in my domain, I'm going to be impacting this executive order that's nationwide throughout the country. If you think that is something that should be empowered to district court judges, and that's something that's completely legal, what has Trump done? Has he said, you know what, you wrote your stupid decision, you go enforce
Essentially,
it?
yes.
No, no. Instead of doing that, he very artfully gave deference to the court by saying, you know what, I'm going to not tell you how stupid you are, how illegal your order is, and how ridiculous and asinine you are that you think that you're the president of the United States and there's 3,700 other district judges who are all present and have executive power. He doesn't do that. Instead, he very artfully avoids a constitutional crisis by saying, you know what, I'm going to pretend that this court order has deference and find some way that my actions are not going to be impeded by any stupid judge who happened to get assigned, and at the same time, not.
Pisco should just ask him at the end here, just to listen to him squirm. Oh, so would you say the same thing about when Joe Biden tried to cancel student loan debt? I wonder what Good Logic had to say about that.
Not embarrass the court by saying I'm disregarding the order. That is something he should be applauded for over and over again because he has saved us from constitutional crisis that these judges are trying to
Unbelievable.
We've definitely gone over.
Yep, I'm sorry.
But it's absolutely fantastic. This has been wonderful. You guys are great. I really do appreciate it. I think time flew, and I'd love to keep going. So, my final thoughts as sort of the, although people don't really call me a fence sitter at this point in my career, I'd simply say, for me, what I just end up hearing is, in this instance, we were right to rule the way we did. And I would only say that when I get asked this question over and over again about what should Trump do or why should he do it, my response is, any leader should enforce a moral and just society. everybody actually agrees with it. The difference is everybody's view of what moral injustice is dramatically different. So there are large factions of a moral worldview. There's two principal ones. They're fighting for what they want, and they're going to do whatever they have to do to get it. I don't know what that turns into, but that's where we're at. So I don't know if you want to give a final thought and shout something out before we wrap.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks so much for having me on. Thank you, Joe. It's always fun when we get into it, and we certainly did. I think we covered some topics, and so I really appreciate being on. Pisco's Hour on YouTube and Pisco Liddy on Twitter. Super appreciate it, and again, always love the debates and discussions.
Absolutely, it's fantastic.
And I'm Joe Nierman, aka Good Logic. I urge everyone to check out my podcast, which actually starts nightly right after Timcast finishes his. I need him to start feeding them over to me like Hamlet. So, but and if you enjoy this conversation, I cover law, I cover politics, I try and make it enjoyable while at the same time, really looking things from philosophical perspectives to right and wrong. So that's Good Logic, LAWGIC, and on Twitter, I'm at The Following Pro. Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking to both of you.
Yeah, this is wonderful. For everybody else, go check out Jeremy Hambley. He's live now, rumble.com. We got the link in the chat. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all tonight at 8 p.m. at Timcast IRL.
Jesus. It's just like the most insane mental gymnastics for glazing Trump.